Is your world lagging behind your expectations?
Are your players bored?
Can they not take it anymore? They lack agency?
Are your players looking for more excitement?
Is it just too damn droll?
Are your players tired of the same old, same old?
Oh my god, the same old, same old!
We've got a solution for you!
Oh boy, do we have a solution! We're changing up your game world!
If you're looking for adventure, excitement, thrills, and a dice-rolling good time, sit back and enjoy the next few minutes with quest givers DM Scotty and DMG. They're taking you on an epic journey through the role-playing experience every Friday. Learn the ways of the Game Master, the Dungeon Master, and delve into the minds of the players. Grab the modules each month to support the channel and play the campaign with your gaming group. You're sure to get hooked on adventure.
Don't forget, for changing up your entire way of playing RPGs, check out our website, questgivers.com. Where not only can you buy modules that help support the actual making of this content, but you can sign up for our regular email newsletters, which are on a variety of topics. Scotty, changing up your game world. So, what's your first step when things just, it's been a few sessions and things aren't going very well, It's like I'm your player and I'm, God, this again. I don't think I'll show up next week.
I think subverting players' expectations, and that's something we do a lot in our modules, right, Gareth? We subvert the expectations. They expect a certain thing to happen, and that can really liven up play when you change that up.
I think it's that shifting of gears. We talked about it last month in the whole time thing. Where we talked about management of time and different time elements in games. That whole shifting of gears mechanism when you're playing is very, very important. And what we do in our modules is that each module is actually a different style. So, we start in a certain way and then we move to a more political thing and then we go to more of a sort of exploration, searching, and then it's more puzzles, and then now in this month's one, it's going into this sort of intrigue. Although the world is the same, we're changing the way that you're perceiving the world each time. And that's helping to keep the players engaged in what's happening in the story. That switch from like an investigation to a horror, or from, a serious political game to a comedy, these sort of things can help to motivate your players to come back for the next session.
Yeah, that's a great point, Gareth. Like a variety of things happening at your table, right? Because kind of the pillars of most fantasy games like D&D are the exploration, RP, and combat, right? And you can, generally in my games, I kind of have those in equal measure. Not every game, some has more or less of the other, but mixing that kind of stuff up with different themes, like you're saying, like we have a module, Messenger in the Woods, where, it's against the clock. You're like racing against the clock, and that's a really fun thing to get the players motivated, and just, they may have gotten complacent. They may have gotten complacent about, just do this and this and this, or take a really long time deciding things, and then suddenly you don't have a lot of time to decide things. You've got to decide quickly, and you've got to move quickly. So stuff like that, and then we have our venture with the mentors, the Knights of Honor, the Knights of Old actually is the name of the module, and you run into these mentors and you go through these puzzles and these challenges that are very thought-provoking and that kind of thing. And so it's changing up the way the game is playing. So it went from kind of this fast track thing where you're racing the clock to, thinking about what's happening and, these puzzles and, how the mentor, how you fit in with the mentors and how they affect you and the world and, and influence the story. So there's a lot of different things you can do. Then that really helps mix it up. And our modules are like that. That's what I love. Our modules, every time you go into a new module, it's like a new type of expectations, and there's new type of things that happen to the players to keep it interesting and diverse.
And critically, what worked in the previous session doesn't mean it's going to work this time. Dark City is a complete paradigm shift from what's come before. It's influenced by the modules that came before, but now the characters are going into a society that's at the extreme end of what you would expect in this kind of game. You know, we've kind of hinted at what's happening. We've foreshadowed, as we talked about in our previous video, we've foreshadowed what's happening in Fusdaberg, which is the actual name of the city. But now you get to experience it. And we've taken a lot of real world sort of places in distress and we've plopped that into the module. So it's kind of like you're walking into a hellhole of various different oppressive regimes. It's basically an actual nightmare city. Everything that you do has a death penalty attached to it. So you're extremely restricted. You're restricted as who you can talk to. You're restricted in terms of where you can go. You have certain expectations of how a city is run and what happens. And this is very different from that. And so you can do that as well. You know, have your players return to a place they used to visit before in previous games, and it's all gone to hell. Or if it had gone to hell before, everything is now at peace. You know, so you can really switch it up very, very nicely. And, you know, again, that we talk about subverting expectations. The players expect something, and you kind of have to twist it against that because it makes it more interesting. That's not what they expected to happen. You know, it's always the people talk about great twists in movies because you didn't see it coming. And it's like, oh, wow, you know, it really got me. That's what we're trying to achieve. That's what we're trying to get. And hopefully that's what we're getting across with these. But there's a lot you can do with characterizations, and we have a great character in here called Jig Sotoner. And tell us a little bit about that, Scotty.
I love this character. He's a dandy, okay, and he approaches the players, and he's a great resource for the players, right? Because they're in the society that any misstep could be death, right? So to have somebody who can help guide them through this minefield, essentially, of this dark city is really a boon. And so hopefully the players will accept that. You know, they'll accept that boon, or they're going to be stumbling a lot in this. But he's a fun character because he is someone who is in the know with the people of the city, like the higher ups of the city, because essentially he is kind of like a male geisha character. Like, he's a refined character. It's not about being a prostitute. It's for him, it's about being like the art of lovemaking, the conversation, you know, the knowledge, and giving you a companion that is not just sexual, but it's, you know, like the other aspects of companionship. So he's a really interesting character, and that's a good segue into your NPCs, like the changing the expectations of the NPCs. Say, people are complex, right? And people say sometimes characters are two-dimensional, and that means they're just one thing, okay? That they're playing a piece in a plot, and they're kind of stuck into that role, right? And that seems like a two-dimensional character. But the best dramas are characters that change up with the situations, or something from their past, or the characters do something and they change. And not just the mustache twirling villain. It's like, ha ha ha, because the best villains are the ones that have an extreme motivation and they think they're right. You know what I'm saying? But it's not just villains, it's all characters. Given extremes of situations, like in the Dark City, people may behave one extreme or the other. People may be like trying to help, like Jig, or they may be trying to abuse the situation. Where they wouldn't before. They might be normal, decent folk before, but they're abusing the situation because it's so extreme. So that's an interesting part of the module, but it's also an interesting part of changing things up. Like when they come back to the NPCs, don't have that same NPC every time. Things can change in their lives. Have that too. So that's a big consideration.
Yeah, I mean, if the characters have their favorite blacksmith, and they go and they want to buy some more weapons, and the blacksmith's brother is there and saying, no, unfortunately his wife passed away, and he's just he's lost to us at the moment. He's in this baleful sorrow, and he's you can what we like to say questify. There's got to be some way that you can help this person through the grief and the misery and all this sort of thing. That's one example of infinite examples. But thinking about things like that, how can you take someone in the world, an actual NPC that you already have, and slap a completely different dimension onto them, so that you're again, which is subvert your expectation of what the character is. Someone who's been your best friend has been working against you the whole time. Someone who has always been forthcoming is no longer forthcoming. There's also the thing where people, the NPC has been kidnapped or something to that effect. But that doesn't really change who the NPC is perceived to be. So it's more about changing their personality, changing their goals. So, we talked about when in our NPC video, there's the sort of the NPC's motivation, and then there's their immediate needs. So if you change their motivation or you change their immediate needs, how does that change the dynamic of the character? So that's really, really important in terms of the NPCs of the world. But you can also do it with the environment. So, when, let's say something, Scotty, like a volcano erupts nearby, how is that going to affect the way that you run the world?
Oh, totally. Yeah, that could wipe out half the kingdom, right? That's a major event. Plague, starvation, people taking advantage of the situation. Maybe an evil god is released. From this thing. I ran a campaign one time called I think it was Dark Knight. It was I can't remember, but it was basically a standard kind of fantasy campaign, and it was where the players were just the standard kind of fantasy tropes doing, adventures, and then a cataclysm happens to the world. It's essentially these aliens come to the world and they take over, right? So it's kind of like these evil beings who were once at the world and were driven out come back. And just before this happens, the players kind of find out this information, and then they're thrust into this situation where, the cities are taken over by these alien creatures and this kind of thing. So it changes the whole dynamic of the campaign. It was one thing where the players are just trying to get into an adventure guild, right? And then the next thing, they're fighting for the survival of, the races of the world. So, that's a way you can subvert, players' expectations, like with the cataclysm thing, with something happening. Or maybe also there's an earthquake, and it causes all these crevices in the world, and all these ancient dungeons open up that were never accessible before, and there's civilizations and all this stuff to explore and find out down, in these massive dungeons. You could have a whole nother world. They were adventuring up in this different place, and then they go to this world in the dark that was in the darkness, and it's suddenly opened up, and it's just totally alien culture. So that can be really, really fun to subvert players' expectations.
Changing the world is a big thing. I mean, if your world has constantly been at war, it's peacetime now. If it's constantly been at peace, it's wartime now. This is a big way to shift up, change maps. Cities burn, that means the map has to change because that city doesn't exist anymore. It's gone. So you've still got the same landmass, but if you've got that earthquake again, now that you can't get from one side of the continent to the other, the ocean has now cut you off. This changes trade routes. This changes the economic flow of the entire world. So these are the things you can consider. And one of the things is a lot of people have very overt and in-your-face villains. So it's very obvious who the villains are. In our modules, we kind of hint at who the villain is, but they haven't actually, you haven't met the villain yet. What we would suggest is that you actually begin to hide the villains. Get rid of, kill off the villain that's been in your face, but new villains arrive that, everything seems okay, but there's a sort of undercurrent or villainy, that it's difficult to know who's who and what's what. I mean, even in Dark City, one of the characters says, we know who the people are that are controlling the city, but we don't really know that much about the people that are above them, because they obviously have bosses. So it's, that's part of it. It's like, that not knowing leads people to investigate and to try to search out and find the answer to things. And that sort of gives you that the world is real, then it becomes real because it's resisting. When you give too much information, people begin to like, I know everything, it's all good. So they don't really want to investigate and find out more. And it's, if you go back to our early videos where we talk about being succinct and not giving away a lot of information, just you're drip feeding them with information, and that causes them to ask questions and find out more. In our modules we have these libraries, so you go and you can research various topics. But if you haven't found out about certain topics, about talking to people or finding things out, you wouldn't know what to look for. And then there's NPCs where you might have read something in the library and the NPC knows information about what's in those books. But if you hadn't read the books, you wouldn't know that information exists. So, these sort of things, when you're hiding information, but still allowing them to access it through questions and exploration and social interaction, that's key to role-playing. It's not all just about combat. There are another 6 pillars to it. But we'll go into detail on the other 6 pillars later on.
We keep saying that, don't we? We'll get there eventually.
We'll get there in the end by about 2026.
Mark it on your calendar.
That's right. Just mark it down. Just say DMG said. There'll be a comment under the video in 2026.
Where is that video? Where
the hell's that video? This is some BS, man. Thank you very much for joining us. It's been wonderful chatting. Of course, continue the conversation in the argument section below. Tell us what you've done to switch it up, change things around, and give us your feedback. We want to know what else you want to hear about. We want to hear your questions, all that kind of stuff, because that helps us create videos that you actually want to watch. Well, we make videos that we want to watch, but we hope that you want to watch them too. So thank you, and we'll see you in the next one.
See you guys.